in the vast and sun-scorched landscape of the American Southwest, where the desert stretches endlessly beneath a blazing sky and history seems carved into red earth and silence, a bold dream began to take shape in the early years of the 21st century. The place was Glendale, Arizona, a city on the western edge of the Phoenix metropolitan area, known for its heat, its resilience, and its quiet determination to become something more than a point on the map. It was here, in 2006, that one of the most ambitious stadium projects in the history of American sports officially came to life. The structure that would first be known as University of Phoenix Stadium, and later renamed State Farm Stadium. This was not merely the construction of another sports arena. It was, in many ways, an attempt to rewrite destiny. At the center of this vision stood Bill Bidwill, the longtime owner of the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals franchise carried with it a burden unlike almost any other in the National Football League. Founded in 1898 in Chicago, the team was the oldest continuously operating professional football franchise in the United States. Yet longevity had not translated into glory. Decades passed with heartbreak, relocations, missed opportunities, and a reputation for being perpetually unlucky. From Chicago to St. Louis and finally to Arizona in 1988, the Cardinals seemed cursed by history itself, always arriving with hope and leaving seasons with disappointment. By the early 2000s, the situation had become unsustainable. Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe, where the Cardinals played at the time, no longer met NFL standards. Attendance was inconsistent, revenue lagged behind other franchises, and the team struggled to compete financially and competitively. The league was evolving rapidly, and stadiums had become more than venues for football. They were entertainment complexes, technological showcases, and economic engines. Bill Bidwill understood that if the Cardinals were to survive and finally thrive, they needed a home that symbolized a new beginning. Thus, the dream of a stadium in the desert was born. The proposal was daring. Glendale, not Phoenix itself, was chosen as the site, a strategic decision influenced by available land, municipal support, and the city's willingness to invest in infrastructure. Construction officially began in 2003, following the approval of public funding through a county-wide vote in Maricopa County. The project carried a price tag of approximately $455 million, a staggering sum at the time, and one that placed immense pressure on everyone involved. Critics questioned whether such an investment made sense for a franchise with such a troubled past. Supporters, however, saw it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform not just a team, but an entire region. From the outset, the stadium was designed to be unlike anything the NFL had ever seen. The architects envisioned a structure that could defy the brutal Arizona heat while maintaining a natural grass-playing surface. The solution was revolutionary: a retractable roof combined with a fully retractable grass field. The grass tray, weighing approximately 18.9 million pounds, could slide entirely outside the stadium on tracks, allowing the turf to receive natural sunlight and fresh air. On game days, it could be rolled back inside, perfectly preserved and ready for play. This innovation was unprecedented in North American sports and instantly positioned the stadium as a marvel of modern engineering. The roof itself was another spectacle. Made of translucent fabric panels, it allowed natural light to filter into the stadium while protecting fans from extreme temperatures. When closed, it created a climate-controlled environment. When open, it revealed the endless Arizona sky, blending technology with nature in a way that felt almost symbolic. It was as if the stadium itself was saying that the past would no longer dictate the future. When the doors finally opened in August 2006, the atmosphere was electric. The stadium's inaugural events were more than ceremonies. They were declarations of intent. For the Arizona Cardinals, this was a rebirth. For Glendale, it was a coming-of-age moment. And for the NFL, it was a statement that innovation and ambition still defined the league's trajectory. The first regular season game played in the stadium marked a milestone not only for the franchise, but for its fan base, many of whom had waited decades to feel genuine optimism. Walking into the stadium, fans were greeted by sweeping steel arches, expansive concourses, and a sense of scale that dwarfed anything the team had known before. The Cardinals finally had a home that matched the grandeur of their history, even if that history had been filled with more sorrow than success. Yet, as the seasons unfolded, an unsettling pattern began to emerge. The early years were filled with promise. Talented players arrived. Coaches spoke confidently about culture change. The stadium hosted marquee events, including Super Bowl XXIII in February 2008, when the New York Giants stunned the previously undefeated New England Patriots. The world watched as Glendale became the center of the sports universe, its desert backdrop contrasting sharply with the icy narratives of East Coast football. For a moment, it seemed as though the stadium had fulfilled its destiny as a beacon of transformation. In the 2008 season itself, the Cardinals achieved something that had eluded them for generations, a deep playoff run. Led by quarterback Kurt Warner, wide receivers Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Boldin, and head coach Ken Whisenhunt, the team surged all the way to Super Bowl XXIII. That championship game, played in Tampa, Florida, ended in heartbreak with a narrow loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Still, hope burned brighter than it ever had. The stadium back in Glendale stood as a silent witness to what felt like the dawn of a new era. But hope, as history would soon remind everyone, can be fragile. In the seasons that followed, the pattern repeated itself with haunting consistency. Promising starts dissolved into late-season collapses. Injuries struck key players at critical moments. Coaching changes disrupted continuity. Each year seemed to begin with optimism fueled by the belief that the stadium's magic would finally translate into sustained success. And each year that belief was tested by painful reality. Fans began to notice the irony. The State Farm Stadium, renamed in 2018 after a long-term naming rights agreement, was one of the most advanced and admired stadiums in the world. It hosted Super Bowls, college football playoff national championships, major concerts, and international soccer matches. Yet its primary tenant continued to wrestle with inconsistency and disappointment. The building shone brilliantly. The results on the field flickered unpredictably. By the 2010s, the narrative had grown more complex. The Cardinals experienced moments of resurgence, particularly under head coach Bruce Arians and quarterback Carson Palmer. The 2015 season saw the team finish with a franchise-best 13-3 record, igniting belief once again that the long wait was over. Glendale buzzed with energy. The desert air felt charged with destiny. But once more, post-season dreams ended abruptly, and the familiar sense of almost settled back into the hearts of supporters. As years passed, some fans began to speak half-jokingly, half-seriously, about a lingering curse, not on the team alone, but somehow tied to the stadium itself. How could a place built to symbolize renewal so often coincide with crushing disappointment? Others dismissed the idea, pointing instead to the brutal competitiveness of the NFL, where only one team ends each season satisfied. Still, the emotional weight of repeated near misses left scars that could not be ignored. Yet to reduce the story of State Farm Stadium to misfortune alone would be deeply unfair. Beyond wins and losses, the stadium transformed Glendale and reshaped Arizona's sports identity. The surrounding Westgate Entertainment District grew into a vibrant hub of restaurants, hotels, and nightlife. Major events brought global attention and economic growth. For countless fans, families, and visitors, the stadium became a place of unforgettable memories. First games attended with parents, championship dreams shared with friends, and moments of unity under the open desert sky. Bill Bidwill did not live to see all the chapters that followed. He passed away in 2019, but his vision endures in steel, glass, and innovation. His son, Michael Bidwill, continued to carry the responsibility of guiding the franchise, striving to fulfill the promise embedded in the stadium's foundations. Each new season arrives with the same essential question. Will this finally be the year when the brilliance of the building is matched by the greatness of the team within it? Today, as the Arizona sun sets behind the stadium's iconic arches, casting long shadows across the desert floor, the story remains unfinished. State Farm Stadium stands as a monument to ambition, resilience, and the relentless human desire to believe in tomorrow, even after decades of disappointment. It is a place where dreams are born, tested, broken, and reborn again. In the end, perhaps that is the true legacy of the stadium in the Arizona desert. Not a guarantee of victory, but a testament to hope itself. A reminder that even in the harshest environments, people will build, believe, and return year after year, convinced that the next chapter will finally be different. And so the stadium waits, silent but expectant, holding within its walls the echoes of cheers, the weight of heartbreak, and the enduring promise that one day, the dream that began in 2006 will be fully realized. As the years passed, and the Arizona desert continued to witness the rise of one of the most technologically advanced stadiums ever built, the State Farm Stadium gradually transformed into far more than just the home of the Arizona Cardinals. Located in Glendale, Arizona, this architectural marvel became a crossroads of NFL history, a place where the league's brightest stars, biggest games, and most unforgettable moments converged under one roof. On paper, everything about the stadium pointed toward greatness. In reality, however, its story unfolded in a far more complex and unsettling way. By February 3, 2008, the eyes of the sports world were firmly fixed on Glendale. That night, State Farm Stadium, then still known as University of Phoenix Stadium, hosted Super Bowl XLV. The matchup alone felt almost mythical. The undefeated New England Patriots, led by Tom Brady and head coach Bill Belichick, facing the underdog New York Giants, quarterbacked by Eli Manning. What unfolded became one of the most shocking games in NFL history. David Tyree's miraculous helmet catch, frozen forever in highlight reels, sealed the Patriots' downfall and cemented the stadium's reputation as a place where the impossible could happen. For neutral fans, it was magic. For Cardinals supporters, it was an unsettling preview. The stadium had proven it could host football at the highest possible level. The spectacle was flawless, the atmosphere electric, and the global spotlight intense. Glendale, once considered an unlikely NFL destination, stood proudly at the center of the sports universe. Yet beneath the celebration, a quiet irony lingered. The most unforgettable moment in the stadium's early history did not belong to its home team. Only 1 year later, during the 2008 NFL season, the Arizona Cardinals themselves embarked on a journey that felt almost unreal. Under head coach Ken Whisenhunt, with veteran quarterback Kurt Warner leading the offense and Larry Fitzgerald emerging as one of the most dominant wide receivers of his generation, the Cardinals defied expectations. They pushed through the playoffs, fueled by resilience and belief, and for the first time in franchise history, they reached the Super Bowl. Super Bowl XLV, played on February 1st, 2009, in Tampa, Florida, became the emotional peak of decades of waiting. Fitzgerald's electrifying touchdown late in the game seemed destined to rewrite history. For a fleeting moment, it felt as if every heartbreak the franchise had ever endured was about to be redeemed. But then came the final minutes. A perfectly timed touchdown pass from Ben Roethlisberger to Santonio Holmes shattered the dream. The Cardinals lost 27-23 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and once again, hope turned into heartbreak. Back in Glendale, the stadium stood silent, holding the echoes of what might have been. As the 2010s unfolded, State Farm Stadium continued to attract the NFL's grandest stages. On February 1, 2015, it hosted Super Bowl XLV, another game that would be remembered for generations. Once again, Tom Brady was at the center of history, this time facing the Seattle Seahawks. The game ended with one of the most controversial and debated decisions in Super Bowl history: Seattle's decision not to run the ball at the goal line, resulting in Malcolm Butler's game-sealing interception. The moment instantly became legend. And once again, the stadium delivered drama, shock, and global fascination, but not for the benefit of its home team. Throughout these years, some of the greatest players to ever wear an NFL uniform walked onto that field. Kurt Warner's calm leadership, Larry Fitzgerald's unmatched hands and professionalism, Aaron Rodgers' precision and improvisational brilliance, Tom Brady's relentless pursuit of victory. Each left their mark on the grass that rolled in and out beneath the Arizona sun. The stadium seemed to thrive on greatness, as if it demanded excellence from those who entered. Yet the Arizona Cardinals themselves appeared trapped in a cruel paradox. Season after season, promise emerged only to collapse at the most painful moments. Late-game interceptions, missed field goals, defensive breakdowns, and improbable opponent comebacks became part of a growing pattern. Even during strong regular seasons, like 2015, when the Cardinals finished 13-3 under head coach Bruce Arians, postseason success slipped away in ways that felt eerily familiar. Injuries struck star players at critical times. Momentum vanished when it mattered most. Confidence dissolved under pressure. To longtime fans, these losses felt different. They were not merely defeats. They were emotional blows that carried the weight of history. Each collapse seemed to echo the ones before it, reinforcing a sense that an invisible barrier stood between the Cardinals and lasting success. The stadium, so modern and magnificent, began to feel like a stage for unfinished stories rather than triumphant endings. It was in this atmosphere that whispers began to grow. In bars around Glendale, on radio shows across Arizona, and in online forums filled with devoted supporters, a single word started to surface more frequently: curse. At first it was spoken jokingly, almost as a coping mechanism. But as coincidences piled up, the jokes turned into uneasy speculation. How could a team play host to some of the greatest moments in NFL history, and yet consistently fall short when destiny seemed within reach? Journalists took notice. Patterns were analyzed. Statistics were revisited. Articles questioned whether the Cardinals were simply unlucky, or whether the weight of expectation inside such a high-profile venue created pressures the team could never quite overcome. Every improbable loss added fuel to the narrative. Every miraculous win by visiting teams deepened the mystery. The stadium's reputation began to shift. It was no longer just a symbol of innovation and ambition. It became known as a place where fortunes could flip in an instant, but rarely in favor of the home team. Visiting quarterbacks seemed to find career-defining moments there. Opposing teams pulled off last-second victories that defied logic. And Cardinals fans were left staring at the field, searching for answers that statistics alone could not provide. Still, through all the pain, the supporters returned. They filled the stands beneath the retractable roof, wearing red, white, and black, carrying decades of loyalty with them. They believed not because history justified it, but because belief itself had become an act of defiance. Each new season was greeted with cautious optimism, fueled by the same hope that had existed when the stadium first opened its doors in 2006. State Farm Stadium, towering in the Arizona desert, became a mirror of the franchise itself, bold, resilient, admired, yet burdened by unanswered questions. It hosted legends, witnessed miracles, and recorded heartbreak with equal indifference. And as the years continued to pass, one truth became impossible to ignore. Greatness clearly lived within those walls, but it followed its own rules. For the Arizona Cardinals, the challenge was no longer just to win games, but to break free from a narrative that had grown larger than any single season or roster. Until that happened, the stadium would remain a place of awe and frustration, where history was made again and again, just not in the way the home crowd hoped. And so the story continues, suspended between glory and disappointment, waiting for the moment when the desert finally gives back what it has taken for so long. Amid so many seasons marked by frustration, near misses, and endings that seemed scripted by disappointment, there is one particular game that refuses to fit the pattern. One night that stands apart from all the others, shining like an anomaly in the long and complicated history of the Arizona Cardinals at State Farm Stadium. It is the game that fans still talk about in lowered voices and vivid detail, the moment when, against all logic and expectation, everything finally went right. To understand why this game matters so deeply, it is necessary to remember the emotional climate that surrounded the franchise at the time. The Cardinals arrived at that matchup carrying the familiar weight of skepticism. Analysts questioned their consistency. Critics highlighted injuries, and fans prepared themselves emotionally for another painful lesson. Glendale, Arizona had seen this movie before. The stadium, with its retractable roof and rolling grass field, had hosted miracles for others and heartbreak for its own. There was little reason to believe this night would be different. Yet from the very beginning, something in the air felt unusual. The date itself stood out in hindsight. It was a late-season game, the kind that defines narratives and exposes weaknesses. The opponent was formidable, a team favored by bookmakers, analysts, and former players alike. Their roster was healthier, their momentum stronger, and their confidence unquestioned. On paper, the Cardinals were simply expected to endure, not to triumph. But football is not played on paper. As kickoff approached, State Farm Stadium filled with an intensity that was hard to describe, but impossible to ignore. Fans sensed it. Broadcasters hinted at it. Even players would later admit that the atmosphere felt heavier, almost charged, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Under the bright lights, with the Arizona desert night stretching endlessly beyond the stadium walls, the game began. From the opening drives, the Cardinals played with a sharpness rarely seen before. Players who had been battling injuries seemed to move with renewed strength. Passes connected with precision. Defensive reads were quicker, hits were cleaner, and communication felt seamless. It was as though every mistake that usually appeared at the worst possible moment had decided, for one night only, to stay away. The head coach's role in this game became a central part of the legend. Faced with high-pressure situations, he made bold, almost defiant decisions. Fourth down attempts that would normally be avoided were executed with confidence. Unconventional play calls caught the opposing defense off guard. Each successful risk added to the sense that this was not an ordinary night. This was a night where fear had no voice. As the game progressed, the opponent began to unravel in subtle but critical ways. A dropped pass here, a mistimed route there, a penalty at exactly the wrong moment. These were not catastrophic errors, but in a league where margins are razor-thin, they shifted momentum inch by inch. Cardinals fans, so accustomed to seeing fortune turn against them, watched in disbelief as luck seemed, finally, to lean in their favor. By the fourth quarter, the tension inside the stadium was almost unbearable. Every snap carried the weight of history. Every cheer was layered with years of suppressed hope. When the Cardinals made the decisive play that would ultimately seal the victory, whether it was a clutch touchdown, a game-changing interception, or a defensive stand remembered for its intensity, the reaction was unlike anything Glendale had experienced before. It was not just joy, it was release. For one night, the narrative broke. If you are someone who feels that American football is more than just a game played on Sundays, if you believe that stadiums carry memories, that franchises carry wounds and hopes across generations, and that every snap of the ball can echo decades of struggle, then this channel was created for you. Here, the NFL is not treated as a collection of statistics or final scores, but as a living narrative shaped by cities, people, moments, and decisions that changed everything. From the desert heat of Glendale, Arizona, where the State Farm Stadium rose in 2006 as a symbol of rebirth for the Arizona Cardinals, to the frozen nights of legendary venues like Lambeau Field in Green Bay, every place has a story that deserves to be told slowly, carefully, and truthfully. When we talk about real NFL stories, we are talking about human journeys. We are talking about owners like Bill Bidwill, who carried the Cardinals franchise through relocations and criticism, believing that a new home in Arizona could finally rewrite history. We are talking about players like Kurt Warner, who went from stocking grocery shelves in the 1990s to leading a team to the Super Bowl in 2008, proving that destiny sometimes waits for the most unlikely people. We are talking about legends like Larry Fitzgerald, whose loyalty to one franchise became a symbol of perseverance in a league defined by constant change. These are not just names. They are chapters in a much larger story that stretches across decades of the NFL's existence. On this channel, every video invites you to step inside these moments as if you were there. To feel the tension of a Super Bowl night, Like Super Bowl X-Thlu in February 2008 or Super Bowl X-Nice in February 2015, when the eyes of the world were fixed on a single stadium and a single play had the power to define careers forever. To understand how one decision, one missed tackle, or one miraculous catch can haunt a franchise for years, while another moment can briefly lift a so-called curse and give fans a reason to believe again. These are the kinds of stories that cannot be told in a highlight reel. They need context, memory, and respect for the people who lived them. By subscribing to this channel, you are choosing to go deeper. You are choosing to explore the hidden layers behind famous games, to revisit iconic stadiums, not just as structures of steel and concrete, but as witnesses to triumph and heartbreak. You are choosing to hear about the cities that embraced their teams, like Phoenix, Arizona, which waited decades for a moment of NFL glory, or New England, where championships reshaped an entire regional identity in the early 2000s. Each video is built to connect these places, these dates, and these people into one continuous narrative that shows how the past never truly leaves the field. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell, because every new story is a new journey. One week, you might find yourself reliving a forgotten playoff run from the 1970s. The next, you might be uncovering the strange coincidences that surround a modern stadium and the belief that something beyond logic is at play. This channel exists for fans who want to understand why certain teams always seem to fall just short, why others rise when no one expects it, and why the NFL continues to captivate millions of people year after year, generation after generation. Here, the game does not end when the clock hits zero. Here, every final whistle is only the beginning of another story waiting to be told. So, subscribe, stay with us, and become part of a community that sees the NFL not just as a sport, but as a living history written in grass, lights, and unforgettable moments that go far beyond the final score. Players embraced on the field, some with tears in their eyes. Fans stayed in their seats long after the final whistle, as if afraid that leaving might somehow undo what had just happened. Commentators struggled to frame the moment, flipping through statistics and historical comparisons, trying to understand how a team so often defined by collapse had delivered such a complete and unexpected performance. In the days that followed, analysts dissected every detail. They pointed to specific dates, noting how rare it was for all the variables to align so perfectly. They cited injury reports, marveling at how key players had pushed through physical limitations. They replayed coaching decisions, praising the courage it took to defy convention. Some even spoke about the crowd, suggesting that the energy inside State Farm Stadium that night had crossed the line from emotional to almost mystical. And that is where the legend truly began. Because this single victory did not suddenly transform the franchise into a perennial champion. The seasons that followed would once again include disappointment, inconsistency, and unanswered questions. The broader narrative of struggle did not disappear. Instead, it evolved. This game became the exception that demanded explanation. Fans no longer asked only why the Cardinals so often fell short. A new, more haunting question emerged. Why did everything work on this one night, and only on this one night? What invisible force had shifted? Was it preparation, chance, belief, or something impossible to measure? The idea of a curse did not vanish. Instead, it deepened. If the curse could be broken once, even briefly, then perhaps it was real after all. Over time, the game took on a mythic quality. New fans learned about it from veterans who had lived through decades of disappointment. Clips were replayed, stories retold, details embellished by memory and emotion. It became a reference point, a reminder that the Cardinals were capable of defying their own history, even if only for a moment. State Farm Stadium, often seen as a stage for heartbreak, gained a different layer of meaning. It was no longer just the place where dreams went to die. It was also the place where, once, impossibly, everything aligned. The desert had given back what it usually took. And so the story of that game lives on, not as a solution, but as a symbol. Proof that the narrative is not fixed, that even in a franchise defined by struggle, there can be a night when destiny blinks, hesitates, and chooses a different path. The legend does not ask why the Cardinals lost so often. It asks why, on that one unforgettable night in Glendale, under the lights and beneath the open desert sky, the impossible finally became real. As the years quietly accumulate and generations of fans come and go, State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, has solidified its place as one of the most symbolic and recognizable venues in the National Football League. Rising from the desert like a modern coliseum, it is no longer seen merely as the home of the Arizona Cardinals, but as a crossroads where sports, culture, ambition, and uncertainty intersect. Its steel arches and retractable roof have witnessed moments of global celebration, historic triumphs for visiting teams, and emotional silence for the home crowd. And yet, through all the concerts, championships, and international spectacles, one lingering sensation refuses to fade. Something always seems to shift at precisely the wrong moment. Except, of course, for that one unforgettable night. Since its opening in 2006, the stadium, originally known as University of Phoenix Stadium, has evolved into a multifunctional stage of immense importance. It has hosted Super Bowls that defined eras, college football national championship games that shaped young legacies, international soccer matches that drew global audiences, and sold-out concerts featuring some of the biggest names in music history. On the surface, its resume is flawless. Few venues in the NFL can claim such diversity and consistency in hosting events of global relevance. Yet beneath that polished exterior lies a far more complicated emotional reality, especially for those who follow the Arizona Cardinals year after year. The team and the stadium have grown together, their identities slowly intertwining. Every season adds another layer to a story that feels less like a typical sports narrative and more like a long-running epic filled with hope, conflict, and unresolved tension. For Cardinals fans, the building is not just concrete and steel. It is memory. It is the echo of cheers that rose too early, the silence that followed missed opportunities, and the collective sigh that seemed to settle over the crowd when momentum suddenly vanished. Time and again, something changed when it mattered most. A promising drive stalled unexpectedly. A key player went down at the worst possible moment. A call went the other way. A bounce favored the opponent. These moments, when viewed individually, appear ordinary in a league as competitive and unforgiving as the NFL. Football, after all, is a game of inches and chance. But when these moments repeat themselves over years and under remarkably similar circumstances, they begin to feel less random and more symbolic. This is where the debate truly begins. Sports analysts, historians, and psychologists have all tried to frame what State Farm Stadium represents in the broader context of NFL history. Some argue that the pattern is purely statistical. In a league designed for parity, where even the strongest teams struggle to maintain dominance, disappointment is inevitable for most franchises. From this perspective, the Cardinals' struggles are simply part of a larger mathematical reality. Only one team wins the Super Bowl each year, and many venues become stages for more heartbreak than celebration. Others point to psychological pressure. Playing at home, in a stadium that has hosted the world's biggest games, can be a double-edged sword. The expectations are heavier. The awareness of history is sharper. Players know what the building has seen, what it represents, and what fans are desperate to experience. For a franchise with a long history of near misses, that weight can become suffocating. Sports psychologists have often noted how pressure can subtly alter decision-making, reaction time, and confidence, especially in critical moments. Then there are those who focus on administrative and organizational factors. Over the years, the Cardinals have experienced changes in leadership, coaching philosophies, and roster construction. Some seasons were defined by bold decisions that paid off briefly, only to collapse later. Others suffered from cautious planning that failed to adapt when circumstances changed. From this viewpoint, the stadium is not cursed at all. It is simply the setting where the consequences of long-term decisions become painfully visible. The building does not shape the outcome, it exposes it. And yet, for many fans, none of these explanations fully capture the feeling. Because there is that one game, that single night when everything aligned, when injuries were overcome, Coaching decisions were fearless, execution was precise, and the crowd seemed to breathe as one. That game did not erase the past, nor did it permanently alter the future, but it proved something profoundly unsettling. The pattern could be broken. The story was not as fixed as it appeared. This is where the idea of destiny enters the conversation. In sports, destiny is often a poetic way of describing momentum, belief, and timing converging in rare harmony. State Farm Stadium, for all its contradictions, has always been a place where destiny seems close, almost within reach, but rarely stays. Visiting teams have found defining moments there. Legendary players have added chapters to their careers under its roof. History has been written repeatedly on its field, just not usually by the team that calls it home. That irony is impossible to ignore. As the stadium continued to host new Super Bowls, college championships, and international events, its reputation only grew. Each major event reinforced its status as one of the NFL's most important venues. And each Cardinals season layered new emotion onto the same field. The result is a narrative that feels almost cinematic, as if the franchise and the stadium are characters locked in a long, unresolved storyline. For fans of American football, this makes the Cardinals' journey uniquely compelling. It is not a story of constant dominance or total failure, but of tension, of moments that hover on the edge of transformation but pull back at the last second. It appeals not only to sports fans, but to those drawn to theories, patterns, and real-life stories that seem too perfectly structured to be accidental. The kind of stories that feel scripted, even when they are undeniably real. Journalists often note that some franchises are defined by championships, others by dynasties, and a few by mystery. The Arizona Cardinals, and by extension State Farm Stadium, fall firmly into the last category. Their story invites interpretation. It encourages debate. It leaves space for belief, skepticism, and imagination to coexist. Is it a curse? A symbolic weight carried by a building that has seen too much history too quickly? Is it destiny? A reminder that not every story unfolds on our desired timeline, and that meaning is often found in the struggle rather than the resolution? Or is it simply a reflection of the NFL itself, a league built on razor-thin margins, where greatness and disappointment are separated by moments that vanish as quickly as they appear? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. What is certain is that State Farm Stadium has become inseparable from the identity of the Arizona Cardinals. Their histories are now permanently intertwined, shaping one another with every passing season. Each new event adds another layer to the legend, another question without a definitive answer. And that is precisely why the story endures. Because as long as the stadium stands in the Arizona desert, gleaming under the sun and glowing under the lights at night, fans will continue to ask the same questions. They will debate statistics and psychology. They will revisit that one game where everything went right. And they will return year after year, driven by the belief that one day the story will finally resolve itself. Until then, State Farm Stadium remains what it has become over time. Not just a venue, but a symbol. A place where history, hope, and mystery collide. Perfectly positioned between reality and legend. If you are the kind of person who feels a chill run down your spine when a game changes in the final seconds, if you've ever stared at the screen in disbelief as a single play rewrote an entire season, then this space was created for you. This channel exists for those who understand that the NFL is not just a league, not just a business, and certainly not just a scoreboard. It is a living collection of real human stories, shaped by cities, stadiums, legends, heartbreaks, and moments so improbable that they still echo years later. From the frozen nights of Green Bay at Lambeau Field to the desert heat surrounding State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, every place carries memories that refuse to fade. Here, when we talk about a game, we don't stop at the final whistle. We go back to where everything began. We remember names like Vince Lombardi, whose legacy in the 1960s turned football into a symbol of discipline and belief. We recall how Joe Namath shocked the world in Super Bowl III in January of 1969, not just by winning, but by daring to believe publicly when no one else did. We revisit the 1980s, when players like Joe Montana transformed the San Francisco 49ers into a dynasty, and how those victories reshaped an entire city by the bay. These aren't just highlights, they are chapters of a much larger human narrative. This channel was built for those who want to understand why certain stadiums feel different, why some franchises seem cursed, while others appear destined for greatness. We talk about places like Foxborough, Massachusetts, where the New England Patriots, under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, rewrote NFL history between 2001 and 2019. We walk through the corridors of old stadiums and new arenas, remembering how Dallas Cowboys Stadium, now AT&T Stadium, became a modern cathedral of football in Arlington, Texas, while still carrying the weight of legends like Roger Staubach and Troy Aikman. Every brick, every yard line, every echoing cheer has a story behind it. When you subscribe, you're not just clicking a button. You're stepping into a journey that connects moments separated by decades. You'll relive the pain of franchises that came painfully close, like the Arizona Cardinals in Super Bowl X3 in 2009, when Larry Fitzgerald's breathtaking touchdown seemed to promise destiny, only for it to be taken away in the final moments. You'll understand why that loss still haunts fans in Phoenix and beyond. You'll revisit games that changed rules, altered careers, and even shifted the future of the league itself. Activating the notification bell means you won't miss the next chapter of these stories. It means being there when we uncover the forgotten details behind legendary matchups, when we explore coincidences that seem too perfect to be random, and when we connect the dots between past and present. From the AFL-NFL merger, announced in June 1966, to the global expansion of the league in the 21st century, every episode dives deeper than surface-level analysis. We explore why certain moments still matter, why fans remember exactly where they were when a single play unfolded, and why football has the power to unite entire generations. This channel is for those who know that a stadium is never just concrete and steel. It is memory, it is expectation, it is disappointment and redemption living side by side. When we talk about the NFL, we talk about America's cities, its culture, its evolution, and the people who shaped it on and off the field. Coaches, players, owners, and fans all become part of a shared timeline that continues to grow with every season. So if you're ready to go beyond statistics and standings, if you want stories that feel real because they are real, and if you believe that the most fascinating part of football often happens between the plays and after the game ends, then this is your place. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Because here, every story goes far beyond the final score, and every video is another step deeper into the heart of the NFL's most unforgettable moments.